Hello everyone, and sorry for this little delay. To be totally transparent, we already did the first interview, so we will redo it just at the end. Someone was too stupid to turn on the button to go in live, and it's possible that it's someone who was the professor of this class. So welcome everyone. Welcome for the creator interview of the project made in Game Dev 2. So for the one of you that don't know what is Game Dev 2, so it's a class where the students are creating a game from zero during an entire semester. But this time it's a bit different because it's the short summer semester, so the student was a bit more difficult, but the results are as good as in normal semester. So I will let you enjoy the game, and so we'll start the interview with the project Decontaminate. Welcome. And so could you describe your game in a few words?
Sure thing. Decontaminate is a 2D top-down shooter where you use these special flowers to help fight against the contamination.
Okay, so that's that's really concise, really short and sweet. So could you tell us more where this idea come from?
So I've had this idea for quite a while. I don't actually remember where it came from, but the final idea for a game ended up being quite different from what we originally intended. Originally, it was going to be a survival game where the player would survive on a contaminated planet with limited resources. But we weren't sure if we would be able to achieve that in the 6 weeks. So we changed it.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but in the game, the player, the character could be infected, and when you start to be contaminated, you have some kind of buff, some kind of power up. Could you describe how all of this works?
Yeah, so essentially when the player walks in contaminated land, their contamination meter fills up slowly. And as it fills up, they're actually able to harness this power and become more powerful. And this is shown through the game through movement speed upgrades, attack speed upgrades, and increased knockback on their attacks. However, they can only hold so much contamination. And if it maxes out, the suit actually backfires against them, and it all comes crashing down, and they get a severe penalty, where they get reduced speed and reduced attack speed. So it's sort of this juggling act that the player wants to play, where they're walking in between contaminated land and purified land, and they want to maintain their meter, because they want to have the buffs, but they want to be cautious so they don't go too far.
Yeah. Could you describe me a bit the goal of Chuck?
Yes.
Chuck, you said it, a bit the backstory of the game.
So the game is set in the year 2145, where overpopulation on Earth has caused food and housing shortages. Main character Chuck is a member of an advanced space program. He's tasked on a reconnaissance mission to this unknown planet. However, after landing, he becomes stranded, and the only way to return home is to completely decontaminate this planet.
Okay, so that brings way more questions. I wonder why the planet is contaminated, and more than this, why we use a flower to decontaminate planet.
So when you first land on the planet, you are told that the reason for the contamination is that there are 3 sources that are causing contamination. However, as you continue playing the game and then you purify these sources, you learn that the real reason for this contamination is the demonic monster Velzanova, who is the boss of our game. He has taken over control of the monsters on the planet and then uses them as minions. For the flower, it's simply a mutation. When the contamination first started to spread, the flower, with its unique properties, evolved in a way to combat against them.
That's interesting, but how you deliver all of this narrative into the game?
So it's delivered by the various NPCs and the dialogues you have with them. In the game, there are three NPCs, which is sarcastic advanced support system Simon, the lovable talking slime Steve, and the mysterious white wolf. Although you meet AI Simon at the very beginning of the game, you'll meet the other NPCs as you continue to explore the world and purify the sources. They'll always appear near the AI Simon as functioning as sort of a main hub for players to gather around.
Okay, thank you. I wonder, there's something that surprised me in the game, and I write here like trap music. It's like not surprising in the bad way, but like the first time I played, I hear this kind of music a bit like, yeah, like with kind of trap song, and then the power rock at the end, at the final battle. So where all of this came from, like why? Because it's surprising in a spatial context to have this kind of music. Could you tell us more?
So we've actually improved on our audio, or our sound system since the beta. So like when the player, when we wrote the music, we wanted to try to make it fit our dynamic or adaptive music system, so that when the player, for example, goes into the area of a flower, the music starts playing, but when they leave the area of the flower, the music stops playing. But it also seamlessly transitions back into the ambiance of the world. And it's the same with the boss. When we wrote the music, we also wanted to sound all distinct from one another, but also able to seamlessly transition into each other without much disharmony.
Yes, that's interesting, but that's not exactly my question. So that's the technical part. I was more asking about the aesthetic. So what makes you create this style, and do you have any inspiration?
So our sound system is based off of that of horror games. In horror games, when the monster's nearby, a sound plays or music plays, and that is used to create pressure on the player. But in our game, we use it to relieve pressure.
Yeah, so that's still technical, but we have to move on to the next team. So thank you for this answer. So yeah, thank you for this game. And do you have anything else that you want to add?
Yes.
And particularly where to buy, where to, to find the game?
Yeah, so unfortunately, their work wasn't able to make it into the final product, but we would like to thank Chad Van Patten and Max Kenny for helping us to create additional environment sprites and a third enemy AI, respectively. And you can find our game on briefjoe.itch.io/decontaminate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Hello, welcome back. So we are here with. Do you have a name of the team or not?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah, yes. What is the name of your team?
It's Sleepy IO Studios.
Okay, so that's good. I will never remember that. so yeah, welcome. And could you describe in a few words your game?
Sure. So Every Last Firefly, it's a 2D action platformer with a primary dash mechanic. You play as a fox trying to defend your forest home. So it has a mystical forest setting and is kind of ruled by these two opposing forces, a serpent and a beaver declan. So it's up to you, the player, to kind of choose who you follow and whose tasks you carry out while defeating monsters in the forest.
So, a platformer. Are you, sorry for this question, but are you not afraid of creating a game in a genre that is already overexplored?
Sort of yes and no. Like we think that a lot of games on the top market are sort of like follow these like big genres, and that they all like sort of base off of it. But we think more importantly is what you do and how you use that genre, and we think like building off of that and with exciting features would be the way to go. So in Every Last Firefly, we have the dash mechanic that goes along with platforming, as well as giving the player agency and different having choices to go through our world. And we think that sets us apart from just being just a platformer.
Okay. You talk about the player, so what kind of audience are you trying to attract, and how you address that in your game?
Our target audience is like children around the age of 12 to 15. We try to make the levels with a few like sort of trap points to stump the player first time they're trying it, but definitely nothing that is unbeatable after multiple tries. We also the player doesn't have to actually kill any enemy he sees on his way. Could also use the dash mechanic to avoid it rather than fight it. And in general, the game is kind of short to begin with, and we're thinking about the target audience, 12 years old, being young and inexperienced, so it would take them more time to get to get through some parts.
Kind of short, you said. What do you mean?
Yeah, so by that we mean more so when we talked about before the two different like opposing forces, like the serpent and the beaver. We're giving the player agency to like choose between them and go on different pathways between those two. So if a player was to just stick with one pathway, let's say, and follow everything the serpent does, then they would only experience like half of our story and only that half of the game. So in that sense, it's more short in that way. But on the other hand, that also allows for a lot of replayability. Our game has two unique endings, so even if you play the game once, you're guaranteed a second time to have a completely different experience. And if you switch back and forth between the quests in the middle of the game, then that even adds more playtime to it.
Okay, and just do you have an idea of how long it takes to like make one entire route in your game?
As in just like following one specific pathway the entire time?
Yeah.
Probably 5 to 10 minutes, I would say. And then if you went and did the other pathway, it'd be similar time for that. So overall, like 10, 15, 20 minutes for that overall.
Okay, good. So you said also 12 years old. Beside the level design, how did you take into consideration that audience?
Sure. So I think a really big part of how we addressed our audience was also through our art style. The narrative content is actually relatively heavy. So kind of to offset the depth of our narrative, we created really vibrant and almost cartoonish art style, even though set in this kind of dreary environment that makes the narrative content much more accessible to younger audience. And even with combat and monsters, kind of offsetting maybe the more eerie and unsettling parts of that with a more vibrant art style.
Talk about cartoonish art style. So did you take inspiration from other game or other medium?
Yeah, we drew inspiration from a few different games and various aspects of our design. The color scheme and setting draw some inspiration from the Ori series and Hollow Knight with a vibrant color scheme in a dark forest setting. While with the more flat character and environment design, we drew inspiration from the Gretel and Hansel game and its character style and animation.
And
we took a few design cues from other games as well. This probably shows in our camera system. For one, we took some cues from Mario World, it was, and Celeste to sort of define how our camera moves about and follows the player. We also took some cues from Celeste in designing our dash mechanic, how that implemented. And we also took level design cues from Mega Man that manifests mainly the verticality that's present in the levels around feel more dynamic.
okay, thank you. And the kind of paper doll character, when did you decide about that aspect?
So that decision was made very early on for two primary reasons. One, again, like Charles previously mentioned, we referenced the Gretel and Hansel game series. They had a very similar character and animation style, which I personally really liked artistically. And also, too, just time-wise, to be quite frank, in order for the 6 weeks, we needed, in order to animate a lot of characters, we needed a style that kind of suited our time restraint. So that was fairly manageable for us.
Okay. And what about the story? What did you try to express with your game?
So we actually have two main characters in our game. We have the serpent and we have Declan, who is a beaver. I'm sure you've seen lots of promotional material about them. We wanted to
Very good promotion.
yeah, we wanted to look into some darker themes about I mean, in the game they both offer you protection and they both seem definitely trustworthy, but I mean we've taken lots of symbolism from other places and they're definitely not the most trustworthy people.
Why? Sorry to stop you, but why a serpent, and even more, why a beaver?
Yeah, it's we definitely thought about like symbolism behind it, like the serpent. We tried to create like a cunning leader. So like we all know how serpents are perceived, like in our culture, as cunning, not trustworthy, and sometimes even evil. With the beaver got into the narrative at later parts, and we wanted to create an opposition to the serpent. So we kind of went more literal with the symbolism. Like beaver is known to build dams, so the beaver in our game was trying to rebuild like the things that the snake was destroying. But soon enough, we realized that the beaver also is just as evil as the serpent.
Okay. Let's go back on the goal. What is the goal of the character?
Right. So the goal for the player is to choose one of those two paths between the serpent and the beaver, and you're supposed to follow their bidding in terms of trying to get protection for your own family. But we wanted to connect that goal narratively wise with thinking of how corruption and how power can just be corrupting. So a lot of our choices are based around like things that are not necessarily morally good or morally bad, and you really have to toe the line for what you want to do to protect your loved ones.
Okay, I think that's all for me. So thank you very much. And where can we download? But if you have anything you want to say, and where can we download your game?
Sure. So we're currently on itch.io. You can find us under sleepy.io. There, we're published, and more than that, we just really hope you have fun traversing the forest and discovering its secrets.
Okay, we'll try. We will have. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, hello, welcome back. It's absolutely the first time we do this interview. Welcome, Team Invisible Thread.
Invisible Thread Studios.
Okay, could you tell us a bit more, like few words about your game?
Sure. So in Tie the Knot, it's a visual novel puzzle game where over the course of a few days, you'll meet patients and you'll help solve their problems by using knot tying in this interesting mix of gameplay.
Yeah, so that's the really special aspect of your game, I think, like the mix between what I will say like some kind of visual novel and a puzzle knot system. So could you tell us more about that?
Sure. So in the visual novel dialogue section, you'll meet patients, and they'll come into your office, and you'll choose questions to ask them. And in the puzzle section, you'll solve their problems that they come to you with various knots that are at your disposal.
Where this idea came from?
Yeah, so originally the idea came from the name Tie the Knot in like a literal and figurative sense. But I thought, okay, so how can we expand this? And I was thinking, well, there's many different types of knots, and they can be used to like strengthen the things that they're used for. For example, some knots are used for building structures, some knots are used to hoist sails. So I thought, okay, what if we take this idea and apply it to like souls and people, and tying knots that can strengthen people's souls. And our premise and the rest of our premise came from there.
Okay. And how this knot system work in the game, and how it evolved during the game?
So our intention under the puzzles is to give knots different meanings to represent different emotions. We first planned to have a 3D puzzle, but ended up implementing a 2D puzzle because of the time limit. We updated our gameplay by putting different puzzles together into one level, and we add more mechanisms to gameplay. For example, you now could have tied more than one knot on the board at the same time, and also you could have a little thing called Blue Islet, which is a spiritual representation that the players should be reach during the knot tying process to cure the patients.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for this question, but don't you think that the player might risk to be a bit lost between the narrative part of the game and the puzzle part, so the link between them? And yeah, I want to be like more precise. Like, are you not afraid that the player will come to play to your game just for one of the aspects, either the puzzle or the narrative?
Yes, so this was an important part of development, figuring out this link between the narrative and the puzzle. So what we have is that in the narrative section, you'll choose choices that are like questions that you'll ask each patient. And these choices will affect the puzzle section and which puzzles you'll be faced to solve. So basically, you need to pay attention to the narrative in order to pick choices that you prefer, and not say, oh, well, maybe I should have picked those choices. So that's why like the narrative and puzzle are equally important, and that's how we made them.
Okay, so about the narrative, Yushan, could you tell us a bit your secret to give life to this character?
Right, so to give life to the characters is to make them believable, and to make them believable is to make them really full characters. As it turns out, people are complex, real people are complex. They have a lot of life experiences. And like, as they go through life, they gain a lot from those experiences. Essentially, when you meet a person in life, there is more to them than just what you see on the surface and just what you see while you're interacting with them. And I wanted that to be the same case with the characters in this game. So essentially, to do that and to flesh out these characters, I created character profiles that were extensive and detailed about these characters, what they like and don't like, what the experiences they've had, how they've reacted to them, how they've grown from them, just small aspects of their personalities and their relationships, and just building these characters as full people, essentially. And when going from that, those profiles to the writing, I use the profiles in order to continue to inform how they speak and act in the game, so that you can really see a lot of the complexity that isn't directly stated in the game, but it is there because these characters have more background to them. And in addition to that, I worked extensively with our artist Madeline in order to also flesh these characters out and express them visually through their design and the design of their expressions. Essentially, beyond just the dialogue you see, you also get to see how these characters express themselves in a visual sense.
Thank you for this wonderful transition. Madeline, what did you try to express with this art style?
Yeah, so being a game about helping people with their personal problems, I felt it would lend well to the topic to create a wholesome look and feel to the game. So overall, I wanted to provide a comforting experience with my art style.
Okay, but how did you do that?
So part of that included having a nice balance between vibrant and muted colors so that it felt uplifting without being overbearing. Also, another important design choice was the window in the office scene. That allowed me to bring some more nature into the scene and bring some sunlight into the room, which just gave it that more open and calming atmosphere that I was going for.
Okay, thank you. So no link at all, but from memory, during the playtest, during the alpha, it was kind of, how can I say that, kind of so-so. Like, I mean, the game was really good, but the player was a bit lost and to understand how to solve the puzzle. So we discovered that it was quite complicated. So how did you handle that potential issue?
Yeah, well, after the playtest, we realized that even though we have great gameplay, with such a steep learning curve to get into the game, it doesn't matter how great our gameplay is because the players aren't going to see it. So we really focused since then on getting our tutorial better. We cleared up the wording to make it very clear to the player what they had to do. We gave an example knot in the background in the first few tutorial levels for them to trace, because we noticed people drawing the wrong knot shapes, getting very close but having just something slightly off. They could really learn those shapes in the tutorial. And we also noticed that players would skip the tutorial, sometimes inadvertently, just by clicking through. So we made the tutorial kind of stop on a certain instruction until you completed that instruction. Say, like ending the knot by clicking the pin twice.
Okay. So thank you. And so do you have any word that you want to add, or yeah, where can we find your game?
Yeah, sure. So you can find our game on itch.io. The link is bigboywoods.itch.io/tie-the-knot. And we hope you'll enjoy our game.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you, everyone. So just a few words to conclude. Thank you for the viewers that are watching this presentation. Our students put a lot of effort in that game. I was honoring them every day, even more sometimes. They really worked hard to make this game. So if you like to see that, if you like what we are trying to do with this stream, if you want to support us, it's really easy. You will have the link of their game in the description, and I'm asking you to go on their webpage and to download their game, play it, and comment if you have something, if you want to share your thoughts about their game. Because keep in mind, we are doing game for you, the player. So we really enjoy if you can, if you play their game. About the stream, I will say that. So now it's time to say goodbye, and we might see earlier, but in the worst case scenario, we'll see next time for Game Dev 2 in spring 2023. Goodbye.